This is episode 29 with guests Adam Safron and Thomas Schindler. Welcome back to the Future Intelligent Leadership Podcast. If you're interested in innovative wisdom and practical tools for leading in a complex, uncertain, and exponentially changing world, then this podcast is for you. Aloha and welcome to this episode of the podcast. This is your host, Tyler Mongan. I'm the president and co-founder of Haku Global with a mission to develop more future intelligent leadership. Today's co-guests are Thomas Schindler and Adam Safron. Thomas is the CEO and founder of Deloitte, developing custom software for clients and supporting clients in the product development and business model innovation process. Through his diverse work of projects, initiatives, nonprofit and for-profit business, Thomas directs his focus and energy towards using technology to contribute towards making the planet a good place. Adam is a systems neuroscientist with diverse research experience that focuses on multi-scale perspectives of the brain, ranging from cellular to computational levels. He is currently doing a postdoctoral research at the Kinsey Institute using neuroimaging methods to study emotion, behavioral drives, and social cognition. In this dialogue, we discuss how to be an adaptive, autonomous, and intentional leader, the important balance between chaos and order during change, the correlation of adjacent possibles, zones of proximal development, and production possibility frontiers, the difference between a day one and a day two organization, the role of predictive modeling and self-modeling functions of the brain for developing a future vision, the significance of congruency and authenticity for developing trust, and how leadership can create a distortion field of reality to inspire collaboration towards a shared future vision. Let's listen. So aloha, Adam and Thomas. Thank you both for being here on this episode of the Future Intelligent Leadership Podcast. Really excited to have you today and for this dialogue. And as always, I want to ask this key question of how can leadership or leaders be more intelligent or smart about the future or futures, given this climate of complexity, uncertainty, and exponential change in the world? And I'd like to start with Thomas, if you could answer this from your perspective in your work.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me and us here. I'm really looking forward to that conversation. So to dive right in, I think I want to begin with my understanding of what leadership actually is. And I want to base that on the work of Ronald Heifetz in Harvard about adaptive leadership. And essentially what he says is there are two types of challenges in the world, and there are two types of leadership towards solving those challenges. And the one type of challenge is the technical challenge, which is a known challenge, or even better, the path towards the solution is known. And I would call that management. And the other one is the adaptive challenge. So you need to adapt a system of some sorts to a new behavior, to a new environment. And that is what he calls adaptive leadership. And this is the type of leadership I'm referring to when I talk about leadership. And how I see this is maybe even best expressed from a little story from the Bible. I think I've never read that book, but somebody pointed this story out to me, and it's the Moses story actually. And it's important because leadership is a team effort. Moses was the one giving the vision, and the vision is a crucial element, especially when there's uncertainty, that gives you the recipe towards where you want to go. And speaking of recipe, this is more or less like you don't follow a recipe unless you have a picture in your mind of what you want to achieve. And too often, if you fall into the management type of leadership, you just follow the recipe without knowing what you're actually cooking. So the Moses approach is having a strong vision, moving forward, and sometimes even creating a vacuum that pulls people behind you. And then there's Miriam. She's pushing from behind. She's making sure everybody gets through. That's the second important part. And then there's Aaron, and he's checking from the sidelines. He's helping the people stay in the movement. And so this is the kind of frame that I'm thinking about when I think about leadership. So you said 2 minutes. I think that was roughly 2 minutes. So let's send it over to Adam.
Great. And Adam, from your perspective, what does it mean for our leadership to be more smart or intelligent about the future?
So from my perspective, I would say that the principles of intelligent leadership into the future for an organization would be the same as for individual sovereignty and autonomy. And of these capacities, which would be particularly important, the ones that come to mind as foremost would be mindfulness, flexibility, intentionality, and criticality. I view these as all being sort of related constructs, different ways of describing basically just fundamental capacity of being able to direct your attention flexibly and intentionally with meta-awareness. Basically, consciousness, consistent consciousness. This is the most important property an individual can have for being sovereign and autonomous, and I think for an organization as well.
Great. And kind of following up now on these initial points, for you, Thomas, with this model that you're kind of talking about of leadership and the Moses model, right? The Moses model, we call it. Sounds good.
This is the picture.
Yeah. What's like some, because I know you've done some foresight work, envisioning futures we did together on a project. And how do you use that model within this concept of like foresight and futures?
Well, as I said, you need a picture of where you want to head. And I want to tie that to what Adam said about sovereignty and autonomy. I think that is crucial. That is actually very, very fundamental, because if you want to move into a future, and you, by definition, have to change the current modus operandi, the world on the way there, you have to be stable as you move. So you have to be sovereign and autonomous while you're still embedded in the system. And in order to do that, you need to be able to communicate the direction and the objective of that sometimes hard path through the unknown. And creating a space in which people that might be pulled into the vacuum that you're creating as you move into that unknown future is probably the hardest part about this, but because that vacuum needs to be something that inspires people, that they see a role for themselves that they can actually fill, and that they want to fill, and balancing that between your own sovereignty, which it allows you to detach from reality and create a huge reality distortion field, which is crucial if you want to do this, but at the same time could control that well enough so that people can actually follow. I think that's the hardest part about striking this balance.
Any follow-up thoughts on that, Adam? And also, it'd be great to hear a little bit too about how this thinking here of like autonomy, sovereignty, consciousness, changing direction and vision also fits into your work with like neuroscience and consciousness science.
So I guess with relation to consciousness and the way I've been in, so I've recently proposed a theory I call integrated world modeling theory, where I basically try to understand consciousness by bringing together basically as many different perspectives as I can, and then finding what's in common across them, cross-referencing across these different perspectives. And the conclusion I came to is that consciousness is what it is like to have a model of the world and yourself and your relation to it. And the function of it would be to basically work as a self-realizing prediction. It seems that goal-orientedness in brain and mind operates by this principle of basically minimizing error with respect to your predictions. And so you can think of consciousness as the dominant prediction of your mind, the main one. And to speak, and so this really speaks to what Thomas is saying, and that having this vision, this conscious vision, to the extent that you can hold this stably in mind, that will be what will be exerting the control energy, the influence over you. And to the extent this is a shared vision, it will be a collective influence and a basis for coordination. The balance that Thomas is talking about also, I'm really seeing that in terms of speaking to, I guess, like mindfulness and criticality. And so this criticality notion that I think about, which is basically, I think it's Peter Bach, I think around 81 or 83, came up with this idea of complex adaptive systems seem to be poised at this balance point between order and chaos. Not too much order, not too much chaos, but you want both. And the idea is you want enough chaos, enough novelty, variability that you have diversity to pull from. But you want enough order that your adaptations can accumulate as you're selecting from this repertoire of diversity. And so this place of being poised at the edge of chaos, this balancing point, this continuous return, this is basically how I interpret mindfulness in a way, as this return to this metastable, flexible place. And I think if that is how one is relating to one's consciousness, this could potentially provide that balance that Thomas is talking about, where you're not overwhelming with a singular vision in this reality distortion field, but you can guide if you need to, but also be collaborative, also be open. There's room for many perspectives to come together. So yeah, those are some thoughts.
Thomas, you have some follow-up thoughts from that?
So what you just said about this intricate balance between chaos and order, this is something that's I find in almost any system I look at, whether that's my own being or the wider world and organization. And it's, if you look at it at a organization perspective, it's you can notice, I think Jeff Bezos calls these day 1 and day 2 organizations, day 1 being a little bit closer to chaos, and day 2 a little bit closer to crystallizing, meaning they cannot reshape themselves anymore. They cannot adapt anymore. And he was fighting for the culture to be day 1 for a long time. And over the last couple of years, you could notice that there was some crystallization happening, and him stepping down there is a total logical next step for him, because now it can be managed until it dies, and he has to take lead on something else because he's a leader and he's not a manager. And so, but what does that mean? I want to tie that a little bit, what you said, Adam, about the chaos and the multiplicity that you try to integrate into and balance in your own consciousness about the future and the world. So there's this beautiful idea by Stuart Kaufman. It's called the adaptive, the theory of the adjacent possible. And for those who don't know, a good way to think about this is if you imagine taking two Lego bricks, and these Lego bricks are your the reality, and then you put two bricks together and you create the third one, and that third one that is now a new form of a brick was in the adjacent possible, in the space of the adjacent possible before. So there's a lot of things, and some people call it the shadow of the future, because there's a lot of things already possible in that space. And picking those things from the adjacent possible, putting them together into a coherent form towards building a shared future is very similar to what you were saying around consciousness, I think.
Adam?
I mean, I think similar, but I think you're also pointing out something crucially extra that was, I think, missing from my description. And that's this, the dynamic nature of the balance, the fact that it's always kind of moving, and that there's no singular like balance point that you're just teetering over, but rather there might be some points where you need more chaos and some points where you need more order based on the situation, both within and without. And you could think of like brains and minds, they're constantly, the different chemicals being released, the different states you're entering into. Like nature would be operating by these principles, changing your physiology, changing the nature of your biological functioning to try to find where you should be, what the right mixture could be of flexibility or of plasticity and stability. This constant, I guess, moving around. There's no singular fixed point, but a constant exploration, a constant trying out of different things. That would be really crucial for any adaptive system. And you're pointing out Kaufman's work and the universality of these principles. So like with Kaufman's work, to find yourself in the zone of the adjacent possible, this or in developmental terms, we might call this like the developmentalist Vygotsky would say, like the zone of proximal development, where like you can actually get the most learning. But you're talking about like with evolution, this is the place where the new is discovered. Or in economics, we might talk about like the production possibility frontier. But the idea is like you want to be in this range where you're at the limits, where you're close to the edge, where you can keep growing, where you can keep discovering the new. But how do you get there, and how do you keep from falling over? It needs to be this continual motion, this continual shifting and flexible exploration. I guess one more thought that's coming to mind, and kind of mindfulness entering in once again, which is, and the examples you were giving of like these biblical stories, there's this challenge of facing the unknown, that as this vision you're living into it, it can be frightening. The new uncertainty in these principles of brain functioning that I've been studying, it seems that there's a sense in which most of maybe the dominant principle of mind is uncertainty minimization, trying to get the best grip on the world, the best purchase on what's going on. But so as you're exploring the new, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty. And so this ability to basically titrate your engagement, like nuance it to both for yourself and others, that's going to be really crucial for any kind of adaptiveness. And as you're saying, I think these are probably universal principles for any complex adaptive system, whether we're talking about a bacteria, a person, or an organization.
I'm curious, kind of following up all of this, is like, just
making it a little more practical for people too. Like, when we have these, because leaders want to have that vision, like in an ideal situation, they have the vision, they mobilize their people, it becomes a reality, right? But that's just not how it works. And it seems like now it's even more challenging, maybe. Maybe it's not, but it just maybe has that feeling that it just like life is more uncertain and more complex. And it's harder to hold that vision and mobilize the people. It's hard even to find out what the vision is, right? Especially within this balance of the chaos and order. And curious, like what are some practical ways that leaders can think about either the idea of vision itself, or holding a vision, or even when to not fully give up on a vision, but when to adapt to a new vision.
I think the first and crucially important element is to really understand who you are answering to. To see whether you actually have the possibility of a vision. So if you are the CEO of a company that you didn't found, that's maybe even a public company, your vision usually cannot be further out than a quarter of a year, and the objective or the fitness function for your vision is pretty clear. So first you have to really understand who you're answering to. And if you are in the beautiful and luxurious position that, let's say you're answering to the needs of your great-grandchildren. Okay, so, and everybody's great-grandchildren, you're truly building something for the future. Then, in my experience, it is actually very easy to come up with a understanding of how you want your great-grandchildren to live. You can ask a set of questions that's touch 360 degrees of what the human condition is roughly about, and then you can go through several processes of doing that in a group process with more coherence, etc., and then break it down into what is missing and backcast and build the infrastructure that's missing. And if you want to get some inspiration and courage about that this could look strange or sound strange, then Google Winston Churchill 50 years hence. Because in 1932, the guy sat down to write an essay called 50 Years Hence, describing how he saw the world in 82. And he had some really weird pictures. But in these weird pictures, he described things like gene editing, solar energy, vertical farming, all in 1932. And so he had the guts to do that. And I think that's the most important part. And that ties back into where Adam started. You need the guts, and you only can develop these when you're sovereign.
And Adam, following up on that, it'd be also interesting to hear any insights you might have gained related to this topic on how the brain works, and resilience and adaptability. And
before going to the brain, I think, like, again, I think, like, nuancing what I said initially, I think Thomas is bringing up some crucial points here, which is, so, like, I was mentioning, like, intentionality, sort of thinking in like value grounding, and a kind of Viktor Frankl sense of like having he quotes Nietzsche as like, he who has a why can survive almost any how, and thinking of this capacity for perseverance for steering the future. But the question is, well, how much steering and of what kinds, and when do you need to pivot? And so it's not just a function, and so it's going to be a function of your goal hierarchy, your values, the depth of the values, but also what's the opportunity? What is the situation you're dealing with? And that's going to be crucial for how much either you want to persevere with respect to a given plan, or maybe relax those assumptions and then choose a different one based on what actually is realizable within this within this possibility production frontier, or this like the adjacent possible. And so it seems that to kind of bring it back to the brain, this in a way would be the function of the different neuromodulator systems, or the value signals of the brain, which are existing in this kind of feedback relationship to the ongoing dynamics. And so as the brain is basically predictively modeling itself in the present, as it's what it thinks is going to happen in the future, and what it thinks what it thinks just happened, and reinterpreting and interpreting, there's going to be different degrees of fit with relation to your values, your desires, the attracting states that you're steering towards. And so these basically these brain chemicals like dopamine, like norepinephrine, serotonin, they're basically being modulated based on these different kinds of error with respect to your plans, with respect to your actions. And they're then adjusting you, basically saying, should I pivot or not? Should I energize this action? Is it, striking while the iron's hot? Or maybe now is not the time. Should I inhibit action? And so, dopamine increasing, dopamine decreasing, things of this kind. I guess this might not, one more thing that's coming to mind that might not be either here or there, but I would like to add to mindfulness, I guess, compassion might be like one of the keyest things for basically both individual sovereignty and co-sovereignty. And that if you have to do these pivots, there's going to be some pain. There's going to be some pain at having to, with relationship to your goals, it's going to be a discomfort, and that the ability to provide comfort to yourself, to accept what's going on in those moments, and for others, that's going to be crucial for doing the necessary pivoting that's going to happen in doing any sort of complex plan, which is most of our plans in a world of uncertainty and complexity.
That's great. Yeah, the compassion component is really important. Go ahead, Thomas. Yeah.
Since you were describing the brain, it doesn't really hurt. This adjustment process of the brain isn't painful, and it's probably not painful because it happens on a continuous basis. So this constant adjustment is a crucial element of the horizon setting element. So if you have a vision, and then you set this vision in stone, that's a problem. It's just as much a problem as setting yourself in the current reality. So you have to reevaluate your horizon on a continuous basis and readjust. And if you do that often enough, like Intel, for example, in the 90s already did that every 6 months, a whole bunch of scenarios, and then creating coherence between them and continuing like that. Then this is a continuous process, and if you, along with that, develop signaling functions like something like dopamine inside of your organization that can sense which of these potential horizons is creates more resonance, then it is much easier and less painful as you continuously adapt to that future.
Yeah, I actually think that's crucial in that, like, it need not be painful. Like, if you're actually well calibrated with respect to your plans, if you're actually adjusting and considering what is timely, what's actionable, and you have this broader perspective, and you're continuously adapting and pivoting based on this, you can have basically a trust that you're doing the right thing. And so we need not even invoke compassion. We can just be flowing and winning in theory, if you are occupying the right stance, the right dynamic stance. It's I haven't achieved this in my personal life, but I believe this is possible.
Yeah.
To degrees.
That is interesting because in a lot of the work I've looked at, trust is such a key component, of even getting people to sit down in the same room and talk and communicate and listen to each other, and also collaborate and so on. But it seems that a lot of times leaders have to work within the realm, or not have to, but they have worked within the realm of like compliance, and getting people to do the things they want them to do, because that trust is sometimes lacking or not strong enough. And compassion seems to be another side that could help, give them another perspective on, where they could look to instead of the compliance component. They can look at the compassion side. But I think, like you're saying, is if the trust is there, that could be more significant, and stuff could just happen from that space.
But I'd like to briefly look into where that trust comes from.
Yeah,
it might come from the leader being congruent with the objective.
Mm-hmm.
And people have a strong sense for whether you're authentic in that or not. And so if you as a leader are mistrusted by your people, there's a reason. Probably you're not congruent with your objective or with the objective you're communicating. So it is the responsibility of the leader to actually live that future that you want to move towards.
Adam?
I'm glad that trust came up, and this importance of consistency and fit, because I guess you would say honesty, and also and the courage required for consistent honesty, both with yourself and others. Like in these models of these models of brain and mind, it's basically you're thinking of brains as entailing these belief webs for modeling the world. And if you insert deception of any kind, or if you're not being fully honest, you've basically injected, you've compromised the whole system, and it's fundamentally weakening. And this ability to if you're thinking of minds as these belief engines, you never want to do anything that's punishing information. And so this consistent honesty and the courage to be honest is actually just really an essential component overall of basic organismic functioning and the information processing required to be an adaptive agent in the world. Yeah.
Thomas, you got some follow-up thoughts on that?
I think what came up for me was that leadership is hard. Right? It's really, really hard. Because of all the things Adam said, right? You have to do things so right on so many levels. And the best leaders, or the leaders I most admire that I have personally met in my life, they are very, very grounded in themselves and aligned with their objectives, with what they represent in the world. So it's very easy for them not to be wrong, because it's so congruent. They have found a way, and we were talking about feedback cycles earlier. They found a way of using to use Daniel Kahneman language to recode system 1 with system 2. They somehow found a way to reprogram the heuristics that they use for quick decision making to be congruent with the contents of their system 2, and that's being absolutely in line with their communicated overall objective and goal. And that is hard work. That is consciousness work. But then you cannot go wrong anymore, because all decisions, even the most intuitive, fast decision you make, will always be in line with what you actually want to achieve.
No, I like that. I like that idea a lot. It seems to, and I could be wrong, but it seems to hint back to what Adam was saying about the brain kind of being this predictive model of the self, right? It's constantly trying to reproduce the self and predict what the self will do, and to keep it congruent, right? Constantly. And then also back to what Thomas said at the beginning about vision and having that solid vision. And if you have both of those really intact, that strong understanding of self, the strong vision, and then all your decisions, your communication all aligns with that. It is like, I guess it plays to that idea of like the Steve Jobs distortion field kind of thing, right? It's like you bring people into your world because your world is so strong, right?
Exactly.
Way.
And sorry to interrupt you, but the distortion is only a distortion from the outside in that case.
Yes.
From the inside, from the inside of being Steve Jobs or somebody else with a strong distortion field, this is normal. This is the reality. And only then can you actually lead there.
Thoughts on that, Adam?
So I'm thinking of the mind as like a giant predictive modeling engine. It tries to do the prediction as cheaply and efficiently as it can. And so it'll tend to handle things at the lowest, most immediate level it can when it can. And so whatever, and you would think of basically consciousness as being this higher level set of predictions, but also more, at least temporarily stable and powerful. And so what would happen is like, so these, and tends to be associated with more system 2 processes. But then whatever is in system 2, that's going to then be shaping system 1. And so if there's this inconsistency, this lack of coherence between this lack of, you would say basically value grounding, then the inconsistency with respect to that, then you might find yourself basically programming up your system 1 in ways that would cause internal dissonance, that would cause prediction error, that would cause you to be at purpose and cross purpose. And you would basically be fundamentally weakening your the predictive engine. It's going to have to deal with this internal chaos, and this is going to cause a lack of harmony that you're going to feel and others are going to detect. And so charisma, the distortion field, that will be compromised from a lack of integrity. And so there's a sense that a fortuitous thing that basically integrity might be the strongest thing of all, because it might lead to the greatest inner harmony, consistency, the greatest basically power. And that this individual sovereignty, grounded in values, would then be something that other people could coordinate around. And it tends to be the case that most values that are sustainably, consistently realizable are going to be those that will be mutualistic. They'll be like involving others. They'll be other concerning. They can't. And so there's a sense that, someone could just be pushing forward in a kind of blind way with their agenda. It might be the case that the easiest path to integrity, not easy at all, taking discipline and courage, but the easiest path might be ethical. It might be just to consistently ground yourself in a both self and other concerning and caring value system. And this might end up being just the strongest frame, the strongest base to move from, hopefully.
What I'm hearing in what you just said is that there's some sort of triangulation necessary. So that there's triangle between system 1, system 2, and a publicly known fitness function, a why, a goal, an objective, and publicly known in order to be controlled for by everybody, by the public. So you announce that this is your why, and then you constantly reevaluate your system 1 and system 2 to be aligned with each other and towards that fitness function. And within that triangulation, you're stable. Whereas in contrast to that, if you don't have that outside reference point, you can try and get your system 1 and system 2 aligned, but there's no way to control for whether that's a healthy alignment, in what direction that alignment goes, and nobody can actually have any perspective into this and relate to this.
Yeah, I like that. I like how that kind of brings a lot of it together right there. I think it's a good place to kind of wrap up too. And so what I'd like to do, first of all, is just give you all kind of an opportunity to share your final thoughts. I'd like to start with Adam. What are your final thoughts after all this dialogue?
I guess my final thoughts would be that in trying to navigate an uncertain world, both individually and as teams, it seems that, even more before we began this conversation, I'm thinking it's the same principles. It's mindfulness, flexibility, compassion, integrity. These are the strongest things you can do to be a adaptive, goal-seeking system, whether you're an individual person or a group. And yeah, those would be my thoughts.
And Thomas?
So first of all, I really like the spaces that happened between all the thoughts in the last half hour. There's a lot of stuff to explore in there. But I think we were also very, very trying to be very serious about all of this. I think what we shouldn't forget is that we should be playful about this. The best technology we have to explore unknown futures is play. Mm-hmm. We never know what we are going to lose or win as we step into the uncertain. And the best way to find that out is by playing. Mm-hmm. And so taking it less seriously, slightly less seriously, engaging more in an infinite game than stacking finite games on top of each other. And I think that could make things more fun, more free, and probably even more easy to build a good future in some way.
I like that. And as always, I like to ask this final question. Might be the toughest one we've had all day. What is one word that you would like to leave for more future intelligent leadership? Adam.
Curiosity, courage, playfulness.
And Thomas?
Love.
Great. Well, thank you, Thomas and Adam, for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate your time, your energy, your insights and wisdom, and hope to see you all again in the future. Thank you for joining us today on the Flowcast. To get a summary of today's dialogue, find out more about today's guests, listen to previous episodes, or discover more about Haku Global's neuroscience-based Futures Intelligent Leadership programs or customized strategic foresight and innovation sprints, visit us at www.haku.global. At Haku Global, we believe it is time for more futures intelligent leadership. The future is something we need to think more intelligently and feel more deeply about, so we can collaborate to discover today's solutions for future problems. If you are in a leadership role and need support or training to scale futures intelligence across your organization, then contact us at Haku Global. This is your host, Tyler Mongan, and until next time, have a preferred and conscious future. Aloha.